YouTube, my gang, what is up? This is the finale, the last episode of the Eco Trail, and what I want to do is I want to say I'm sorry for the delay, but at the same time I'm not sorry, because it's been a whirlwind of trying to record this. I've recorded it twice, and on both occasions I've gotten around 40 minutes in on each one, and I want to do it where I don't want to go by points. And the last two times I've recorded, I've pretty much, unbeknownst to myself, have recorded it in points. I wanted to thank Dara, my coach. I wanted to kind of give insight prior to the race, then lead into the race, post race, and then finish off this year what I'm planning on doing, and then obviously the plans for 2025. But the main reason for the video is to give you guys the inside of the race and how I felt. So what I'm going to say is that this video will be very chop and change. I'm currently on my first run since the ultra. I'm doing a handy number around Kiludry. No distance required. I've no heart rate on, so I'm going by feel, because I'm not going to go by the heart rate on the watch. But with that being said, I gifted myself a new Garmin a day before the race. I got the Garmin Fenix 8 51mm screen, and I'll allude to that in this video. So while I'm here and getting this run, I'll try and get as much as the race cap completed, and as I'm not dying going up this segment of Kiludry. So I think what I want to get off my chest first is I feel that I need to get out of my system, even though it isn't a problem, and it wasn't a problem, because
lap 1 8:32.
Thank you very much, Garmin. Lap 1, kilometer 1, 8:32. I feel that I need to explain an excuse, but it's not an excuse, because I completed the ultra, I completed the race. I worked Monday the 23rd and Tuesday the 24th of race week. I was on an early shift on the Tuesday, relatively early, but come that day I felt a little bit ill. I'd flagged in with Dara on the Monday, come Tuesday on my check-ins, that I had a bit of a, I'm going to walk this part, that I had a bit of a tickly throat. So I was like, right, I can't, because after the 36 kilometer run, I had the same feeling. It was like my body was just run down. Maybe I had reached my capacity and I needed a rest. And as I had alluded to in week 10 and week 11, one of those videos, I didn't have a rest and recovery week since the third week of this training phase. So I had gone 7, 8, 9 weeks, 9 full weeks of no rest and recovery. So after the 36 kilometer run, I hit a wall. It inhibited the peak week. Ideally that 36 kilometre run, which was 2/3 of the race course, would have been completed a lot closer to taper week, but we technically hit it at the end of build to start of peak week, because the way my shift pattern of work played out, I went into 6 days of horrible lates or something like that, or mids, and we just couldn't allocate enough mileage and time for the turnaround times that I had. So potentially leading in to race week come taper week, I wasn't over the most of it, and come Tuesday I started to feel that tickly throat, but this time it really hit me. I woke up, I had a bit of a lump on my throat, then my ears and my nose started to go. So for you guys that I met on the morning of Eco Trail, you would have met my partner Sive and my dog Fozzie. So Sive and her sister were just saying, Jack, probably your best bet is just to load up on vitamin C, even though I pissed right through it. They were just like, drop 1 tab of vitamin C into a litre of water and rotate that every 3 hours. And I did that on the Wednesday. So Wednesday was my first day off, and I was off Wednesday all the way up until the following Monday, which is of last week. So I was on a rest, a down phase. So the plan of action was to get all the liquids on board and fuel as much as I can. So I did that. Come Thursday, we tried to start the carb load. My appetite wasn't really there, but I was eating my normal amount of food that I would have allocated as usual to a training week. Come Friday, I felt slightly better. Maybe took a bit of a turn again, but it was okay. But I was conscious that I needed to get an additional amount of calories, i.e. carbs, for the race. So I started to do that, consistently drinking water. And then I went out to Aldi. I bought cinnamon buns, I bought brioche trays, potentially extra portion of carbohydrates on a dinner phase. And that's what we end up doing leading into the Friday. Now, come the Friday evening, I started to get pretty nervous. I was in my head in relation to me being sick. I was in my head of like, I can't have done 12 solid weeks of training and just letting it vanish like that one day out or on race day. I was like, I can't let it slip. It just isn't in me to do it. So I was chatting to Dara. Dara was like, where's your head at? I was like, listen man, I'm here. I'm doing it. So went to bed on the Friday, tried to grab as much of an early night sleep as I possibly could. My sleep wasn't great. Rocked up as planned. I got up at 7 a.m. on the Saturday morning. I had my shower. I tried to fuel as much as I possibly could, but I just wasn't hungry on the Saturday morning. So I drank a Lucozade in the morning, bit of water, and in my eyes, everything was done. The whole training was done, the fueling was done. Everything down to a T that Dara had asked, I'd executed. So I rocked up the Saturday morning. We went to grab a coffee, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have a coffee, Sive. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. So Sive went in, she grabbed the catalyst. I just walked Fozzie along the seafront, and I tell you something. I don't know who will watch this now because it's a recap, but to the people who came up to me, and I didn't catch your names unfortunately, because I think, well, you certainly caught me on the hop. There's 3 occasions while Sive was getting a coffee, that 2 people came up to me and said, "You're the lad from YouTube. I was using some of your videos for the recce for their training on some course descriptions." Then, as I went back to Sive's car to get ready and get all my gear, I fucking met Dylan and Joan. It was phenomenal. And I tell you something, if you guys are watching this, that was one of the highlights of that day. It was one of the highlights of the whole 12 weeks. It was fucking fantastic. And what I'm going to do is, at the end of this, if Dylan and Joan watch this, I've got a photo of Dylan and I at the start line. If there's somehow we can private message each other and exchange numbers. If I had a head on me shoulders at the time, Dylan, I would have got your number and I'll send you the photo. But I'm actually going to get that photo printed. I'm going to get it framed, because I want to get a collage of my bib number. I'm not too fussed about the t-shirt. The t-shirt's a t-shirt. It's not really. It's just all sponsorships, and that's no discredit to the Eco Trail. And obviously, can't get a fucking pint glass frame, so I'm going to get the bib number framed, and I'm going to get a couple of photos printed, and I'm going to get it actually framed and collaged and put it up somewhere in my room as my first ultra. So to Dylan and Joan, thank you. You guys really settled the nerves for me. It was great chatting to you, Dylan. It was great chatting to you, Joan. I know I didn't catch either of you guys afterwards, and I certainly didn't get to catch Joan, but I hope your 30k race went as swimmingly as possible. And Dylan, you'll know why now in a minute, but I didn't get to catch any updates on you. But I know when I was talking to Dara and Sive afterwards, they were telling me, and you fucking smashed it. You got it around a 4:30 time. I know you were saying to me you were looking for a sub 4, but Jesus Christ, man, a 4:35 or a 4:40, whatever the time may be, that was fucking good going. And I have to give you credit again. When I saw you coming back the way, pretty much you're probably around 27 kilometers in then, and I was only going into Jess and you were leaving. It was great to see your face, and just that picked me up, because when I get into the race and description now of telling you, you'll know how fucking dark and deep I was going there. So that camaraderie of the trail, and especially seeing you cross, was fantastic. So we'll go back. So as I said, I gathered my gear at the car catalyst. I bumped into Joan and Dylan. I started to pin up my bib, get all my gear, put it back, and we walked down. So I walked down, I spoke to Dylan for a while, started to kind of feel the buzz, and then again 2 other people came over to me and said, "Jack, Fozzie, you're the guy from YouTube." Bloody, I was like, fucking hell, lads. I was like, I'm just a local lad.
Lap 2, 10:26.
Thank you. Kilometer 2, 10:26. Thanks, Garmin. It's a girl, so I don't know what I'll call my watch. I might call her Mary or something. Thanks, Mary. I just use YouTube as like my outlet. It's like my vlog, my diary. I don't expect people to watch it, and to me the content isn't great. It's just me like this running or sitting in my room. Days I'll wear the mic, and this time I'm just using my fucking phone and there's no mic, so hopefully you guys can hear this. But we got down and the countdown started, and I was looking at the piece of paper that I had that Dara had made for me. So prior to the race and all the preparation, Dara and I had sat down multiple times, multiple hours, and we went through the course description, the details, and how I felt. And I don't eat, something that's going to be hard to chew. I don't eat. What time are we at? I've time to go off the beaten track. I'm going to go up here. I was telling Dara, on any of the elevations gain, I do not want to eat anything that's going to be a lot of chomping and chewing. So I didn't want to eat a square bar. I didn't want to eat a certain source of jelly, because I just found myself, eating too much and I was gasping for air. And I think I alluded to it before. I don't have great nasal passage. You know, maybe I might get one flow of air through one nasal and then fucking that'll block up and I'll get another. No one needs to fucking explain anything to me there. Obviously I have a problem. Probably a couple of knocks from fucking rugby or something like that or whatever, but I don't have good nasal breathing capacity. So I just felt when I was eating something that was chomping, I was gasping for air. So when we included all of that into our race tactics, nutrition, hydration, we had a plan set. So we had a plan set that usually on any elevations I was to take a sip of my electrolytes, just make sure that carbs were still on board. And then on the flats we try and just replenish as much as I possibly could with adhering to the carbohydrate and sodium intake. So, excuse me, came to the start line, had the piece of paper, was looking at it. On the piece of paper I had paces. Now bear in mind, I had bought this watch the day before and I literally just threw it on and that was it. I just wanted to make sure that I had a watch that had enough battery that I could see my pacing and my times. I thought with technology that when I had my external heart rate, the MyZone, that when I was there in the morning, it picked up an external heart rate and I accepted. Well, I tell you something, fucking certainly wasn't my heart rate anyway, because I felt good on the first 1 or 2k and it just didn't represent it. I personally thought anyway. So anyway, countdown started, had everything that I needed, put the Strava on my phone just in case to start it, and then I started the watch. Perfect, bang. I was the last man at the pack. I just knew that as at the start I would have gone too fast. I knew if I was in the middle I just would have been pushed by people behind me to keep that pace, and I didn't want to be in the way of people getting around me. So like always, I just hung at the back and that was it. And to be quite frank, when I look back at it now, the pacing that I was supposed to hit in those opening phases, I was out the gap. There'll be a sheet that I'm going to share somewhere in the middle here that will talk about pace. I don't want to put it out now because I don't know if it'll make any sense. It'll make sense at the end. So maybe at the very end of this video that I make, I will go quiet for a bit and you can pause. But I took a screenshot of the race analysis of aimed pace and performed pace. But I can tell you something, from kilometre 1 to pretty much kilometre 16, I was way above my pacing. Sorry, as I said to you before, I'm still not comfortable recording myself when I meet people on the trail, so hopefully I'll get the edit right and we'll get back into it. So in regards to the pacing, I blitzed the pacing. I had aimed for, I think it was around a 10.5 to 11 kilometre pace just on the seafront, just to allow myself to get into it. I ran a 6:45, which was the equivalent of around 39% higher than aimed. The same for the pacing when I got top right head across. I ran around a 7 something out of an aimed 11. I just had a lot of things in my head going on. I had a lot of things in my head, as in, am I sick? How am I feeling? Do I want to run by feel just to see how I am? I was looking at my heart rate, and on my watch, it has a watch screen face, and it was showing that I was in like the high end of the orange into the red zone. I'm like, I just don't feel like this. And then I start second guessing myself. Okay, well, that's the fucking wrong heart rate sensor that I've accumulated or connected to. So I was running the seafront, I was the last man, everyone was bombing. And to be quite honest and quite frank, looking back at it now, there was fucking no way I would have been able to keep to that high pace that everyone shot off at there. And being somewhat comfortable, because the pace that I even hit was too fast, or not too fast, but for what we had planned, it was just way too fast. So I got up to the top of Bray Head, and usually on the training phase I was getting up there at between 22 minutes was my fastest, and then around 24, 25 was like on point. I got up to Bray Head at 22 minutes. Took on my first source of fuel, which was my gel. Started to get to the top of the Greystones Trail. Took on my other source of food, so on and so forth, and I started to get into Belmont, and I started to feel lethargic. I started to feel like I didn't want to consume any more calories, I didn't want to consume any more fuel. And for the first time ever in training phase, I started to get like stomach problems, like GI problems, that I needed to go to the toilet. And I had never experienced anything like that on my long runs. I had no problems with gels. I had no problems with solids like square bars or bananas, jellies, liquids. And all of a sudden, just fucking coming into Belmont, I'm like, Jesus Christ, lads, I actually wish there was a fucking toilet here. I was actually slightly past Belmont. So I was like, oh Jesus. I started to get into Kilmac. I ran down Kilmac, obviously crossed the bridge. I'm like, right, Jack, we're checking time. I'm like, let's grin and bear it now, you know. We're about to get into the fun stuff. It's around 4.5 kilometers.
Lap 3, 8:56.
8:56, kilometer 3. Cheers, Mary. I was like coming to the right side of Sugarloaf. I'm like, I know this is just going to be consistent for 4 kilometers of elevation. Poles are ready to rock and roll. I'm fueled. I know on this part now that my calorie intake, my fuel intake is going to be my Lucozade. So I started getting my Lucozade in. As I started to ascend that part of Sugarloaf going to the aid station, I had noticed that I was really gumming for liquids, primarily my water. So on race day I ran with a 2 litre back, or 2 litre bladder, just of blackcurrant, at a pouch like so of electrolytes, and another 500ml pouch of Lucozade. And I was going to rotate both of those at the aid stations. So when I got up to Sugarloaf, I was gumming. I was drinking all the water. I drank all my Lucozade. I got there. I'm like, right, let's see what the shit show is. I'm completely off pace now. I'm completely off fuel wise. I don't feel the best. I need to cross the chip sensor just to get me in and get me to the toilet. Looked at my watch, and it was 2.5 hours. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was like, I just don't feel I'm running the race that I deserve to run. And that is so, what's the word? Oh, like I want to chat shit to myself here. Like, stupid, like, what's the fucking word? I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but like, I didn't deserve to say that, like, because I didn't deserve to run any run. I was running at what I was doing, you know what I mean? You don't deserve anything, you gotta just go out and get it. And I was being dealt with a couple of things that I hadn't been dealt before, and so be it. So went, checkpoint, did what I had to do. I was like, all right, I actually feel somewhat okay now. I'm like, I've got a half an hour to play with. So again, I was the last 46 kilometer runner for the whole entire race. Bear that in mind now. So this is when the mental game's starting to play, because I'm starting to think like, okay, well, getting to the aid station, cut off 1 for the 4th time, maybe, certainly the 3rd time, 4th time in training now on race day. It's not a fluke. I'm able to get the 15k in 2.5 hours. So I parked that. So now I'm thinking like, what the fuck's going on? Like, why is my pacing, my fueling off? I then started to tell myself, like, Jesus Christ, this is sad. Like, I'm the last runner doing this. I'm like, what is going on? Like, and then I started to get into the farmland coming across into Jouse, and I started to see runners come past me, and I started seeing the colour on the bibs, and they're the 46 kilometre race. I'm like, holy shit, lads. I'm like, what's going on? And then I see a 46 kilometre runner up ahead, and her name was Sue. I'd met Sue at Belmont going over, and I had just chit chat back and forth. So I ended up kind of strolling with her going into Jouse for a bit. And as I was coming through Jouse, that's when I met Dylan. He was on the fucking home stretch powering through, and he was the pick me up I needed, because at that time, coming through that part, I was just in my head. I'm like, what the fuck, Jack? I'm like, I'd been so good all the training, I've been so good doing the training run, the fueling. I'm like, I've after knocking 30 minutes off the first aid, I'm like, what's going on? Why aren't I enjoying this as much as I possibly can? Like, why am I drinking much more water than I've usually done? So why aren't I eating? I'm like, fucking hell, I'm the last person of a race, you know? I just wasn't filling myself with credit or positivity. So we got into Jouse, we started to go. And lads, I may have to put this phone away now in a minute, because I'm about to get pissed on here. So I'm going to hold off, and I'm going to get this done when I'm back in the car. It's raining. And I'm going to tip on back to the car here. I'll catch you in a few. Good luck. YouTube, we're back. I had to look over the last video that I took yesterday when I was running, because I started to get absolutely pissed on finishing my first run back. And I said I was going to do it in the car, but I completely forgot about time and work and then walking the dog and stuff. So I was like, right, I'll just leave it. So I'm out now this morning. I'm actually walking the route, the new route of the eco trail that you would have finished. So coming through Raheen car park, I'm walking back on myself. Don't know why I'm doing that, because yesterday I was in Cooldery and now I'm back up here in Bray. So anyway, listen, we were discussing me leaving the aid station. We were discussing me in relation to my food and my hydration, why I wasn't like enjoying it, and you know, maybe stress should have been somewhat alleviated because I had got to the aid station in 2.5 hours. So I had the time. Now, as I was leaving Jouse, I'm running in, I just felt like my legs were shot. I was coming through that farmland, and if I haven't mentioned this, I didn't really listen full back to the last 2 videos, but if I hadn't mentioned, I got started to the point where I was the last man on the 46. So that was a bit of a fucking head melt. I then had started seeing the 46 kilometre runners come past me, meaning that they had just done the Jouse loop, so around Powerscourt up the Wicklow way and across and back. And the only thing that kind of kept me going was seeing Dylan running past me in the opposite way on his home stretch. Because at that point, and obviously no one would know, but I was in a fucking dark place. I was really second guessing myself. I had all these mixed emotions of like, Jesus, am I sick? Am I gonna last? As I alluded to in the last video, why aren't I eating? Why am I not consuming the liquids that I should be? Or why am I drinking too much water? So anyway, let's get back into it. I was coming across the farmland there in between Sugarloaf and Jouse, that no man's land. That part of the course, whether it was changed on the day due to the severe puddles on the original trail, I do not know, but I never ran the part or recce'd the part that was through that portion. Made no difference, you know, it is what it is. It was still the same field. But I actually said it to the woman that I was running with, Sue, and I actually said, geez, my legs are feeling fairly fucking heavy. My legs are feeling really heavy coming through this, really heavy. And at this stage, I wasn't experiencing anything bad, but what I would say is, if we could note that just my quads were feeling tight, you know, on the knee extension. So locking out my legs, my quads are feeling tight. I was just getting a bit of tightness coming through the back of my legs, but I thought nothing of it. I just thought, right, I'm in it. I'm just maybe slightly faster than I usually would be on a run. I was like, let's grin and bear it. We started to come into Jouse. We started to take the trail, obviously looking out for the flags and stuff. Again, part of that trail that we did coming into Powerscourt, I hadn't really recce'd that main part until probably the last portion of it. Again, no big deal. It was marked out. It was great. We were close. Grand. Fantastic. It was only then coming from anyone that had ran it, but you hit a lovely kind of like part of the waterfall, like the sublet, like kind of little stream, river, lake part. Really picturesque. I've taken multiple photos of it. It's lovely. Very tranquil, or an essence of tranquility. But there's an awful climb to get back up onto the trail that you need to get into Powerscourt. I started to walk or climb that, and you know the teardrop muscles in your quads, called your VMOs, your vastus medialis, they started to pinch, and I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? I'm like, I've never experienced anything like this. I'm like, okay, right. Try to shake them out. Wasn't really working. Kept on going. They subsided. I drank a bit of Lucozade, drank a bit of water. I tried to get a bit of food, like a square bar into me. I was getting the jellies into me because I knew they were small and I could hit, well, 4 wine gums were the equivalent to 22 grams of carbs. So I was trying to horse those into me, or I used like the smaller wine gums, and I think you had to consume around 11 or 12 of those for an intake of around 23 grams of carbs. So I was taking the wine gums. Got into Powerscourt, got up to the waterfall. Sue, again, she had flown over from America, Massachusetts for this. She's like, oh, I've heard about this. So she hung around taking photos, like, here, I'm just going to try and bait on, because I think I knew in the back of my head I was going to hit a bit of trouble. Anyway, she caught up. I actually bumped into a group of mountain bikers, and actually a colleague of mine from work was in the mountain bike group. So he just started to earwig me for a bit, and just that portion of like leaving Powerscourt, that like main road stretch before you take that horrible elevation, I just fucking, excuse my language, I don't want to curse on YouTube, but lads, I just felt that knot in the back of the right hammy, and just kind of trying to maybe kick on a bit, and bang, there's my first fucking cramp. I was like, oh, here we go. Just my hammy just went on me. I'd never, lads and lassies, if you've had followed, I had never ever complained about cramps. I never had a situation. I never had any problem consuming my carbohydrates, my sodium intake. Never had any of those problems. But all of a sudden, bang, I got the hamstring cramp. And it was just right up into, like, you know, the crease of your bum cheek, your ass cheek. So Sue was like, here, I've got salt tablets, do you want to take them? I was like, I've never taken them before. So I said no at the start. And then she's like, there'd be no problem you taking it. So I was like, okay, we'll take the salt tablets. And to be quite honest, not much really availed of them, let's say. So in the crease up there, it's like the insertion of your hamstring. Anyway, I took the salt tabs. They were kind of no real avail. I took them, I stretched them out. You're not supposed to stretch out, but I couldn't. It was really sore. So I was like, right. And the first thing that came to my mind was, Dara kind of said, if you start to feel the pinch, you start to feel the knot, it's game over. You're in it. It's like when you feel it, you're too far gone. That's it. So that in my head then started to play real big tricks on me. I'm like, oh, I'm bloody in it now. So I just said, here, listen. I was like, Sue, don't. I wasn't like, not like I was running with Sue, but I was like, don't hang on for me, you know. Like, I'll be all good. Like, I've got everything here. If I was this way, I have everything that I needed. I like had multiple. I had electrolyte tabs with me. I had water. That was actually the only probably maybe sketchy thing I was worried about, was the water, because I was going through a lot of it and I had only gotten into paraskort and joust. So I'm like, let's take a handy here for a minute. So the hammy went, we started to run along anyway, and we came to that like massive elevation. The elevation that was calculated on my Strava was at the half marathon mark. So this is 21k in, and this is the elevation that you start to hit when you're climbing up to the Wicklow Way to get on top of Paraskort Waterfall. As I started to climb that, bang, my quads just went to rock. There was nothing, I was in it. Every time I extended my leg and my quads contracted, just gone. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I just start really having these like bad mental games. I just started to second guess myself. Like I was just in my head for the whole entire time saying like, why? You know, I'd never had any of these situations in training. Nothing. I'd no situations with cramping, nothing. I'd ran 2/3 of the course on the peak week run effort, no problem. The only problem I had in that was my feet. No problems at all, nutritional wise. Everything was going down a treat. And I was just in my head then. I was like, I'm so far in. I'm like, what's going to happen now? You know, I'm looking at time. I'm conscious of time. Sorry, I'm obviously walking the unbeaten track of Brayhead that's been forgotten. Up the old side here, Newcourt Road. There you are. And we're going to try and find a way. We'll go up this way. Go ahead. So I started to climb and the quads started to subside, but you know what? There's no real point kind of giving you more depth, details of it, because quite frankly, from climbing that portion of Paraskort, getting on top of Paraskort Waterfall and getting across to the valley, it just got to the point where the quad cramp just became norm. It was like numbness. It was just weird burning sensation to the point where it was actually just manageable. We then got into the valley, started to climb up the valley. And again, I don't know if anyone noticed, but when Eco Trail announced the change of the 46, or re-highlighted as the 45 kilometre run, if you look to the back end, they had joust going on the outer boundary line of it. Now, again, potentially it was a last minute change, but I was so happy when the marshal was there to throw us back in to the Joust Woods, because that trail was really nice. So when I got up to that final climb and I saw the marshal and she was at the gate, that gave me a pick me up, because I just knew it was all downhill. That portion of the race was around a 360 metre elevation total gain. And then to get up there and then to be told, oh yeah, you're going to go back down now. Phenomenal. I thought, great. I'll chance the gel. Got a gel. They were going down a treat. But oh no. Started to open up the stride. Quads wouldn't allow me. Started to feel the pinch in the hammies again. I'm like, it was at this point the realization just set in. I was like, this is my race now. Like, this is how my race to finish is going to be. I was like, now I need to start figuring out how the fuck to get out of my head and how to just battle along, use the poles as good as I can, and go from there. We're starting to come around finally, the last corner of Joust, to come back to the point where you climb again to get into the car park. And out of all fucking cramps to have, my right calf went, and it was like someone put the handbrake on me. I just foot locked, went into full dorsey, plantar flexion, just toe pointing right down. I was like, no, I'm going nowhere. So I was like, right, I'm on my own now. Battled away, was really feeling sorry for myself. Got up to the point then where you get to that Calvary car park, etc. And had a group of lads there. You're doing good. And me being an absolute bloody sweat and a Debbie Downer, I just said, I'm the last man. And I was like, Jack, you're not about this life, man. You're not about this life. I'm not about that life. I'm an upbeat individual. I've always been upbeat individual, and for this to have happened, I was like, nah, I'm not. Here, Foz. I was like, I'm not having this. I'm not. So we just plodded along. I caught up. I got into that farmland again. Started to mess about with the farmland, running across, looking at the watch. And lads, I got across the road that you cross over for Roundwood, and to get onto the road to go to Sugarloaf for aid station number 2. Lads and lassies, you wouldn't believe it. I was coming in at 5 hours and 33 minutes. I clocked in 5 hours and 33 minutes on aid station number 2. Like, with all of that happening, battling all the cramps, battling everything, somehow I just let my feet take me, and we were just cracking on. I don't know. I actually don't know how to explain or put into words. You know, it's a weird one. I'm gonna see if I can put that here, and see if we can put this here. Yeah, it put me into a weird one, all right. So I got to aid station 2, and it gave me a tiny bit more hope. Here, it gave me a tiny bit more hope. It gave me that half an hour cut-off point again. That half an hour cut-off point again of, okay, done it. I have a half an hour to play with. I'm on point. My paces are nowhere. So we're like, right, we'll play it on. Here, Foz, we're going to come this way. Here. Try to find our way out. I'm in the old kind of, is it the dirt bike kind of section of Bray Head? It's hidden up at the very back. It's off the lane there of the farm. I'm going to try and find my way. Just all the ramps and stuff. But anyway, got my tag, went across, got my tag. And usually on that aid station, we'd originally made a plan, Darren and I, that I would reward myself with a can of Coke and a cinnamon bun. And oh, there you are. Come on. Me like a spare tool. I'd reward myself with that because here we go for a now trailer. You know, because 1, Coke, sugar, cinnamon bun, around 60 grams of carbs. I couldn't stomach anything. Liquids is all I wanted. I just wanted liquids all the time. All the time. And when I left that aid station, I was like, right, I'm on the home stretch. I try to be positive and...
Lap 1, 1933.
Cheers, Mary. 1933, lap 1. Doesn't feel like 1 kilometre. When I started to climb up the Sugarloaf again, that was it. My quads were dust. That was at the point. Jeez, Fuzzy, I think I'm on a downward slope here, kid. Maybe a dangerous game. Having my phone out. Sorry, lads, going quiet here. And lassies. I'm off the beaten track here, up here on the side of Braehead, and I'm coming down a trail that isn't a trail, and it's full of leaves. Nearly went there. If we went, or how and ever, spice up your life. Now, we're gonna climb up this, mum. Start to ascend the Sugarloaf on the final lap around it, and I just knew then that was it. My quads were gone. I'm in the heart of it now. I got up to the top and I was like, nah. I'm leaning on my poles. I'm trying to stretch my quads. And this is when a runner from the 80k went past me. Her name was Eleanor. And just from afar, she shouted at me saying, "You're all right?" And I'm like, do I say yeah? But I just said, no, I'm not. I'm cramping really bad. And she just ruffled through her fucking, her trail vest, and she threw a bag at me. And she goes, "Get them into you." And says, "If you can't get them in, just lick the salt off them." Didn't she only throw me a bag of cooked baby potatoes riddled with salt? And I went to forage some. And I was like, sorry, I'm trying to change the phone here. Complete aesthetics. I was like, "Do you want them back?" And she's like, no, keep them. So I was starting to munch on the potatoes, and out of all the food that I had, all the food that we had in my backpack planned, the potatoes went down a bloody treat. I don't know what it was. They just somehow went down a treat, and whether it was a psychological thing, you know, but it just felt like they did something anyway. They kicked in, and I just ploughed on a bit. So one of the lads said, "Head up, feet in the ground, and plough on." And that was kind of the motto that I started to go along with there, because I just had to. Anyway, I feel like I'm waffling on here. I'm kind of really lengthening out what doesn't need to be lengthened. So let's just crack on with it. Got Sugarloaf. If you knew or do know, and anyone has suffered with cramps, you'll realise that the part of Sugarloaf going down to the right hand side on the way back is by far the worst descent. And when you've got no quads, because obviously quads are what extend and flex at the knee and obviously produce force for you to stop when you're going downhill. And obviously you know that when you're going downhill, the primary muscle that contracts is the quad. And when you're lengthening out or extended at the knee, the hamstring's lengthened and the quad is contracted. So when I'm having quad cramps, nothing is working. So I'm going down that part. I'm like, this is just absolute hell. I was like, grin and bear it, use my poles as much as I can. Did it, grand. Got to kill Mac. And I'm not going to lie to you. When I realised there's the little Sugarloaf, and I'm literally just over the brow of that, up Braehead, I'm home, I started to get a tad bit emotional, because I'm like, it wasn't a tad bit emotional as in like, oh, I've done it. It was, again, that headspace of like, Fozzie, leave that here, look. Here, come here. Look at this. Started to get too emotional to the point, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm like, am I going to get it done? Because it was by far the only time, looking at the watch, that the pacings made sense, and I knew I was way off my pacing. I was like, that portion has destroyed my time. And as I got over the flyover of Kilmac and I started to take that lane, that absolutely fleeced me. It was never ending. And that's when I had that negative mind frame, like, yeah, I'm absolutely snookered here. I'm done. And I got to the top of that laneway. I was ploughing along and I saw that woman there. And she's like, "Oh, you're doing really well, keep it up." Now, bear in mind, I had recce'd that part of the course. But I had only come over. So I've gone from Belmont up and over and down it. I haven't gone the way that we did on the way back. But I tell you something, that was absolutely brutal. And especially in the disarray that I was in, I was absolutely annihilated. Absolutely annihilated. Come on, Foss. I'll keep on telling YouTube how annihilated I was. I just couldn't, and I was getting up there and I got finally to the top of the little Sugarloaf, and I'm like, oh, it's downhill. I should be excited of the downhill. Another runner that I know, Niamh Fitzpatrick, she's another amazing ultra runner. Another girl that has helped me tremendously with advice and stuff like that. And she's an absolute unit in her own right. She passed me, she's like, just got to plough it on, got to truck it on. So I kept on doing that. And the reason why I said I was looking forward to the downhill is because that part of the Sugarloaf for Belmont is the worst part if you were to climb. And when I realised we weren't actually going to climb that going over, I was like, deadly, I get to do that on the way down. Sure, Jacko has no quads. So we went down it anyway, got down that part, and it was to the point where I had to like stick my paws out in front and like step, stick, step. I couldn't just walk down. Like, I don't think I can make out how bad my cramps, how bad my cramps were. Like, it was game over. Like, I'm not lying to you, like it was bad. Got into Belmont, that was the final tag. Luckily enough, the marshals there, they just asked me, like, you all going? I'm like, no, I'm cramping severely. One of them gave me a bottle of Lucozade because I was pretty much out of all liquids at this stage. I had like just plain water and I had no Lucozade, so I had this Lucozade. And then one of them was like, do you want to pour these jug of water over your legs? I'm like, nah, like, that probably won't do anything. And it was then when I started to run into Belmont that the portion where you come out of, where the entrance gate is to Belmont, I would have thought that we were running on that road and then cutting across. But I actually didn't realise that you went across that entrance and then continued on the bike lane. I'd never ran that or recce'd that. And then that was a whirlwind because that was all downhill. Foz. That was a whirlwind. Went down there and I saw the marshal in the distance, the lovely view of Kilrudery House. And I realised I've this poxy field to climb. Got up it, was getting up it, and I just had to, at the top of that, just stop. My quads gave way. I actually started to feel sick. And it was at this moment, so that was we're probably around the actual marathon mark in, and I didn't even celebrate because that's the first time I ever hit a marathon. I'd never done or completed a marathon before. And I thought, this is going to be nice. And it just wasn't, you know. Here, fellas, we're going to come this way. Just wasn't. So you'll begin to realise that I've been chopping and changing the video just between walking and stuff like that. So the last part there was finishing off my walk with Fozzie, and then again, just thinking about it in hindsight, I started to kind of get a bit peed off with myself, and I'll go into that once I explain the whole race thing. So I think I capped off in the last section of that video. I was discussing that I just hit the marathon mark, the 42, and I wasn't even excited. And that's the first time I ever hit a marathon. I hit the marathon mark in my ultra marathon, and that marathon mark was pretty much in Belmont. And as I was saying, I had left Belmont and I was looking at that beautiful view at Kilrudery House of Gardens, and I had to take that uphill battle again into the farmland to get onto the Greystones Road. And what I was alluding to, between all of the cramping and stuff like that, it is the first time that I ever looked at my watch and in any of my runs actually had to kind of run, walk, whatever it was, and calculate paces, because as we'll discuss more, like in the whole training phase and completing runs that I had previously done, we had on feet time to complete the race in around 7 hours and 30 minutes, let's say, right? That's with all the running that I had done, all the course sections that I had completed, and all the pacings that we've accumulated in training. It was coming in at around 7 hours and a 30 something race, maybe give or take 8 hours. That was obviously the coaching that I was getting from Dara and everything that we had put in, and that's what we were hyping myself up to. But like always, as I had suggested in previous videos and recaps, I had that little self-doubt, and maybe that little self-doubt had overcome me leading into this, and I just said to myself, listen, I'd be happy with the 9-hour window. I mean, on the course description, you know, it's given 3-hour cut-off, so cut off 1, 3 hours, cut off 2, 3 hours, and then pretty much getting home in 3 hours. So I was like, the 9-hour mark will be fine for me. I'll be happy if I get it, laughing. So when we hit the half marathon mark and we were leaving Belmont and we were getting into Kilrudry and about to hit the Greystones road, that probably pinged in there at around 43 kilometers. So I was around 3 kilometers out, and I was probably around the 8-hour and 15-minute mark. And it's just at that time I was hitting that road. I'm like, right, I'm on the flat now. I'm going to open up, give myself enough time to tackle the Bray Head climb, the last part. And then I should be okay then coming back down. But got to keep on remembering, like, I'm bloody suffering with, like, severe quad cramps. Like, I just can't reiterate, like, how bloody sore the quad cramps were. Like, I've never, not to say that I've never experienced quad cramps before, but I've never experienced quad cramps within my training phase, let alone the bloody race. So I was like, right, if I get 1 kilometer, like this kilometer now, at like a 7-minute and 8-minute pace, can I do it on the flat? I tried to open up and I just couldn't. I'm like, oh no. I was looking at my average pace and I was probably, I don't know, we'll have to look it up at the sheet. It was probably at a certain pace and I just wasn't happy with it. And then when I hit the Bray Head, I think we got around 8.5 hours on the watch, and I think it was just then I'm like, right, I'm just not, it's probably going to take me around 10-15 minutes to climb this thing because my legs are fried. I'm not there. I just began to start to kind of well up. I started to kind of get a bit emotional. I'm like, for fuck's sake, like, you know, I think I was very hard on myself that, you know, the 9-hour achievement goal of getting it was just slipping out of my grasp. I was like, just thinking of like all the hard work that I've done, for Dara, you know. But at the end of the day, as Dara said to me, like, we'll get into that, but like, I was thinking, like, I've let Dara down, you know, friends, family, I let Sive down and stuff like that, let myself down. And I don't know why I'm being so harsh on myself when I run. Like, you're supposed to run for fun, but maybe that's just the way I am, maybe it was the first one. I had a lot to kind of prove and achieve and stuff. So probably my worst own critic here, but just all that started to come into my head when I was going through the Bray Head, and then I was hearing these footsteps. Like, oh my god, who is like about to breeze past me? And then I had just realized that the 10k race has just started. So I had all these nippers going past me. I'm like, holy fuck, I'm here just dragging myself with the poles. I'm just dragging, I'm getting boom. I'm like, holy fuck. And then luckily enough, a runner ran past me and I was just keeping my head down all the time. But I don't know if he watches these, but again, it's another guy that has been through it all with me and given me, you know, tips, tricks, and just always word of encouragement. Even on my Instagram, he'd always drop me a message. But it was Paul Nealand, Polly. And he's done this race before, and he does all these races, marathons, half marathons, trails, whatever it is. But, you know, he's a new, well, he's not a new father, but he had just had a second kid. So he's got two babas, 2 babies. And he was just saying, like, the 10k was going to be for him this year. Anyway, long story short, he had ran past me, and I was just in the heart of it. And I just heard this, you know, he's a thick Bray accent, and he's like, I needed it. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. He just shout, come on now. He's like, come on the fuck now, Jack. He said, you have it. He said, it's fucking too late to let it go. He said, you have it now. You've broken the back of it. As he's running past. And it was just those words of encouragement that, like, I needed to kind of pull myself together to realise, okay, right, good luck with the time. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I had this frame of mind that, okay, the race course description was like 9 hours. So I was like, I'm now going to have to grin and bear of like a DNF. Did not finish on my timescale thing on my race because the 9 hour window. I was thinking that's what it's going to be. Then I started playing these scenarios in my head. Like, I'm going to get down to Bray now, and because I didn't get in the 9 hours, they're not going to announce my name coming across because, you know, I'm outside the time. I was fucking playing. I was playing these mad mind games on myself. Mad mind games. So between getting that word of encouragement and then on my watch, well, it's charged at the moment, but on my watch, I was getting like notifications from Sive, and she was just giving me words of encouragement, like telling me how proud she is of me and that she loves me and all this type of stuff. And, you know, just, yeah, just, I was like, I don't know. It's like, right, I got it. You know what I mean? Just got to pipe on and just, you know, keep on going. And as I said a few minutes ago, like, it's head up, feet in the ground and plough on, like, you know what I mean? So I got up to Bray Head, and, you know, the trail started to get narrow, and I just wasn't able to run, like, trails with dip and stuff and curl. I just couldn't apply force through my legs because I just knew my quads couldn't hold. So I'd walk, run, step to the side because the 10Kers were coming past me. Then I got to the open track, I'd come down Bray Head, same thing again. I'd just keep to the side because I couldn't apply any force going down. And then we'd come around then into the old part, and I was like, oh, here we go. I've got those bloody steps of the old cable cart. Same thing, just people running behind me. I couldn't jog down. Like, again, you've obviously got the picture now. My legs were fried, my quads were dust, they were gone. I just didn't have it in me. I couldn't. So just all of this stop-start accumulation just kept on adding time, and got into Raheen car park, came down, like, right, I'm on it now. I'm like, just shuffle, Jack. Just shuffle. I made a quick text just to say to Sive, because she was with a group of friends and family, and I was like, I'm on the way down now. And I think I texted Dara maybe, or I texted Dara beforehand. And I forgot to mention this, but like, Dara had messaged me the night before. We were FaceTime to each other on WhatsApp, and he just looked at me, goes, I'm going to leave you with this, said, I'll see you tomorrow, kid. And hung up on me, and that just gave me goosebumps because, you know, he's a friend, he's a coach, but like, he works in Cork, lives in Tipperary. I was not expecting him to come up, and you know, as he said, he wouldn't have missed it for the world. So I was coming down Bray Ahead, and I could just see where the new apartments are being built just at the Star Amusements. I had saw my mum and Fozzie, and I saw Dara, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you lads, I just burst into tears. I don't know why, just maybe you do know why. Maybe you're listening to me like, Jesus Christ, Jack, you're very hard on yourself. And I just let all kind of a fucking emotion like kind of leave me. Just Dara handing me a can of full sugar Fanta saying, do you want this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to neck that. And, you know, my mum telling me, come on now, Jacko, you're there. And Dara's like, come on, he's like, I'll take your sticks off you, let's get a bit of a run. I was like, Dara, like, I'm fucked, man, I'm cramping. And then we start to open up, and then I get a hamstring cramp. Second one out of the whole race, I got it there. I just couldn't, obviously open up on the flats and like getting a bit more knee bending and stuff like that. Just hammy went, and he's like, you're nearly there. And then he's like, you know, Jack, stretching like the worst. I was like, I know. And then I just start telling him like, I'm sorry, Dara. And he's like, just calling me an absolute muppet and hitting me little nudges, like saying, will you come on? He says, you're about to complete a bloody ultra. He's like, liven up. He's like, stop saying sorry. He's like, pretty much he was just saying like, it's not like you were at the last aid station and you made the phone call and said, I'm dropping out. He's like, Jack, you are around 200 meters out of completing your first ever ultra. And I was looking at my watch, and at my watch, I was 20 minutes over the time that I wanted to achieve. But in the mind frame of Dara and his coach and just being a friend, he's like, you're about to achieve this. He's like, lighten up. And me going from like saying, I'm sorry, I let you down, to being like, I'm about to achieve my first ever ultra. I'm like, I'm 200 meters out, and my mum was like, come on, Jack, come on. And just start getting into the crowd, and then people start to cheer and clap and well done. And yeah, just had to grab a hold of myself. And I said here to my mum, like, give me Fozzie there. And she's like, no, you can't take your dog. I was like, give me Fozzie. I'm taking him across the finish line. And yeah, took Fozzie, and we crossed the finish line, I think, of an official time of 9 hours and 23 minutes and 54 seconds. And, you know, a little video clip that someone got up, but like I was running in and you just hear your name. Take it home, Jacko. Congratulations. 46-kilometer ultra. Take it home. And then, you know, I'm hearing my name being called on the phone, and I'd only ever seen him on social media prior because Dara's doing, and I'm going to get into it, Dara's doing like a charity event with this individual, but it was this guy, and he's like, well done, Jacko, boy. Great stuff. And it was Luke, and he's recorded. I was like, Jesus. And then to make it even sweeter, just crossing that line, I see Sive, my girlfriend, and she's just screaming her head off, come on, Jacko, come on, Jacko. And then seeing Enya, which is her sister, and her partner, then my cousin Shawnee, and then at the time I didn't realise, but then there was Kayla and Matthew as well, and they were there. So it was kind of just the sense of relief, done, dusted, you know. My watch clocked in at 48 kilometres from a 46-kilometre ultra race, advertised as a 45-kilometre, originally a 47. So on my Strava, on my watch, I calculated 48.2 kilometres in 9 hours and 23 minutes. And that was my first ever ultra. So that's the race description. That's the race in a nutshell of how I felt. I think to round it off now, because I know it's going to be a long one, I think to round it off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to block my face. I'm going to block my face, and I'm going to put a screen grab of the like the distances that I had covered. And what I'll do is I'll actually take it with me. My dog is, you're fine, Fuzz. Relax, kid. I'll take you with me, and my watch and my laptop is in the kitchen here, so I do apologise for the kitchen behind me. But what I'll do is, if I can perk the analysis up. So yeah, there we are. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to have you here, all right, and it's going to record. But hopefully while this is recording, I'm going to have what I have on my laptop screen now so that you can see it. And this is pretty much just the Eco Trail 46-kilometre analysis that Dara did then for me afterwards. So I've just given you the race description of how everything went from pretty much kilometre 1 all the way through. On the screen grab, you'll see that column 1, which is A, is like obviously from, you know, 1 to 48. And then you'll have the time of start, 9 a.m, and then all the times that are calculated or what we expect to be at in relation to pacing time-wise. And then column C, so the second column in, don't really worry about that, but the third column where it says aim, that is obviously the pacing that we had originally discussed, and I've taken majority of my averages from all of my training phases over the 12 weeks. So let's say the last 9 weeks of covering courses. And we had obviously set out a plan that in the first portion of the race, as I had alluded to in the course description and race there, that, you know, I ran and I was the last man at the pack, but we had originally said that I'm going to run an 11-kilometre pace for at least the first 3 kilometres. That will get me up Bray Head and across the high trail. And then I would kind of just cruise along coming into Belmont or Kilroy into Belmont at a 10-kilometre pace, and then an 8:30 and a 6:30, just to accumulate a bit more time, etc. And then we'd slow it down. We'd go back to probably around 11-kilometre pace, and that is more so the pacing coming in and climbing the Little Sugarloaf. So take my time, and then obviously coming down across to Kilmac, or that trail coming down, we'd pick up the pace again to an 8:37. And then finally taking that ascent around the Sugarloaf, the pacing would then drop back, and we'd probably look at a 10, 11 and 11 pace per kilometre. If you then go right across, so let's say we're looking at the first 1 to 15 kilometres. If you go right across and you see performed, you'll then see a column next to it of a percentage difference.
Anything that is highlighted red to orange means that I just blitzed it. I went above the pacing that I should have, and then anything in the green was something that I hit below par. So from the first 3 kilometer pacings, I was supposed to hit 11 minutes per kilometer. Along that seafront, I ran a 6:45. Going up the side of Bray Head, I ran a 9:52, and then coming across the top, finishing off that high trail, I ran a 7:48. So with all those differences, I hit a 39% difference in the allocated time, a 10% and a 29% in the first 3 kilometers. I went out the gap, lads. I went out the gap. And then if you just look again, some minor changes, an 8%. And then you see the 22, which is probably kilometer 7. And then we kind of, small changes ever so slightly, a 9, a 2, etc. So a slightly just behind on the kilometer 6. I was 9% over. But as I said, you look then at the aid station. So at the 15-minute mark, at the aid station, the kilometer mark, I came in slightly just over the recommended. So again, that's obviously when I started to feel the pinching and the quad cramping. So that was a 21% in difference of time over. And then obviously it didn't make any sense, because when I left the aid station, I just put the boot down on that road stretch to get across the farmland. And then, as you can kind of tell, the more you scroll and we accumulate the mileage, you start to see the changes there. So 21, which is the half marathon, is when I start to kind of really start to struggle. You'll see the percentage starts to kind of drop. I took the incline, so the climb, I took really heavy and fast at 19, but then it started to play havoc. So as I started to climb the Wicklow Way there, from kilometer 23 all the way back to 32. So 32 on my watch clocked in as the aid station now. It was probably around the 30 kilometer mark. So 30, 32, but as you can see from 30 back to the 22, I lost a lot of time there because I just started to really cramp. So I went way above my pacing that was aimed and then performed. So I was near enough 2 to 3 minutes above that I should have hit. And as you can tell, the 32 kilometer mark, which is pretty much leaving Sugarloaf and getting down the side, was by far my slowest, because that descent, as I told you before, was very, very sore. And then as you can tell, there's just minute changes. And then from kilometer 39, which is probably going to be the Belmont phase or Little Sugarloaf climb, that's when the times really start to kind of, you see the block of time starting to change. So we look at aid station 1. I get there at 11:01. Am I right in saying that time wise? Yeah, 11:01. So a lot of time to play with. And then when we look at the second aid station, I get there at sorry, I'm looking at the wrong times here. Apologies. Yeah, so I have a lot of time. When we look back, so am I right in saying this? When I look at 39 kilometers, yeah, so I'm around 3 o'clock mark getting into Belmont, or coming across into Belmont, or Kilmac coming inside. Yeah, would be around that Kilmac way, Little Sugarloaf on the Kilmac side, and then getting over. So yeah. So there are my pacings. I obviously will still have that up on the screen here. So if you want to just look at that before I get out of it. But that was pretty much it, and we'll take that off the screen now. So that was the pacing side of it. And that was really it, gang. That's pretty much all of that happened. Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Dara afterwards, went to the Martello I thought I was going to have a pint. I had 1 pint, but I just couldn't get it into me. But, as I said, we look at that there on the sheet of, I moved for 7 hours and 37 minutes, which is just 10 or around 5 minutes of difference of what was calculated by Dara and the training phase. So he's like, Jack, everything was right. It was just the stop-start cramping accumulated the extra hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. And, you know, it is what it is. So all in all, it, you know, I'm happy now in hindsight about it. I'm just my worst own self-critic. I just know I can do a lot better. And then when I spoke to Dara and we kind of let the dust settle and we were speaking about like what we're going to do for next year, I think we alluded to that the remainder of the year now, I'm just going to kind of, you know, try and accumulate as much mileage as I can. I'm probably going to try and run weeks of mileage of 30 to 50k, just try and wave it up until Christmas. And then for the new year, I was saying to Dara, I'm going to try that 46 again. And he just said, respectively, Jack, he's like, with the heartache that you've gone through, he's like, nothing really can get worse than what I went through. He's like, everything that you hoped wouldn't happen in a run or a race happened. You know, we tried to kind of see what the issue would have been. And I think what we've alluded to, it potentially wasn't dehydration, or maybe could be potentially that I overhydrated, but really, in essence, for an average Joe Soap like me, dehydration couldn't have really been a big factor. But what we were saying, and also what he was kind of trying to say and suggest, is that there's not really a lot of research out there to suggest that depletion of sodium or dehydration of, let's say, a level of that or what I achieved could cause cramps that I had gone through. And I think when we both looked at it, I think he's right. I think what had happened is that because I was sick with the 3 days leading up to it, that potentially my conditioning prior to the race was depleted, and that actually sickness played a lot of it. But again, that can't be used as an excuse because we finished the race, like. So it's not an excuse, but it's more of a factor of potential conditioning was the factor of why I had experienced a lot of cramping. And also we should highlight that peak week for me in relation to my work roster fell in a really horrible week for me, because it was 6 days of work and they were all lates, or there were lates, day off, and then I was getting like these mid-morning shifts, and I can't do much on those. So for Dara to calculate a peak week efficiently enough for me on that week, we just couldn't. So that weekend, before technically leading into peak week, we had to run my highest peak mileage, which was the 36, the 2/3 of it. But technically, that was 2 weeks out from the race. So ideally, that wasn't actually an ideal situation to run a peak week on that, or run that peak one. So when we kind of dial it back, we were kind of saying maybe the run up of everything between the 36-kilometer run actually flooring me and knocking me off my feet for a while, that I didn't get to accumulate as much mileage as I potentially could, and also that run being that far back from the race, that coming into the actual peak week, ideally I would have been a week out with that run. So when we look at it, I think we kind of just said it was probably in essence sickness and just the conditioning leading into it, because of how the training run knocked me, and then obviously the sickness prior to that. So everything on the day I think was done correctly, but I think just the hand that was dealt was the one that we played, and that was kind of it. You know, nothing more, nothing less to it. We can't sit here and dwell. Everything that we did, we achieved. We ran the 48, and that was it, you know. So yeah, we can't complain. So I think to wrap this up, I'm certainly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make this a bit more, whatever. I know it's very stop-start choppy, and it is going to be long, and I apologise, but I didn't want to kind of cut any corners, and it is going to be my last one. So I'll try my best in the description to kind of highlight where I'm at in relation to time stamping. I'm going to put a note at the start of this YouTube video to say, here, listen, apologies for the cutting of it. And then obviously now at the end of it, I'm going to
post a load of photos, and I'll try and put a bit of music or something behind them so that you can have a look of the photos. I am sorry that I didn't get any footage of the actual race, but like, to be quite honest, I just wasn't in the headspace for it. And I think before we wrap it up, I think I've got to kind of really say big thanks to Dara. I know he'll watch this, so and I've said it to him before, but I'm going to say it again. Like, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to cross that line. And the way he kind of turned around to me and said, well, you're the one that did it. But really and truly, you know, it was more than just Dara coming on board. He brought a bit more of a meaning of to why I do things, because, as I stated before, I had a lot of questions that needed to be answered, and by God, this race did it for me. I wanted to quit so much. I had a lot of self-doubt, but, you know, I hadn't gone through hardship in ages, or if ever. I had gone never through any hardship, and certainly this ultra questioned a lot of things, my capabilities of just, you know, who am I and what am I about, and sure, I answered them. So here we are. But if it wasn't for Dara to get me through that and kind of instill some form of belief in my capabilities and abilities of, you know, performing such numbers on my feet, then we wouldn't be here. So as he told me beforehand, he doesn't do sappiness and stuff like that. Well, unfortunately, Dara, I fucking do, kid. So but with respect to him, you know, I just wouldn't have been able to do what I did without him. So Dara Byrne, you're an absolute gent. So when you watch this, I appreciate you. And I suppose on the backside of this YouTube video, for anyone that probably would ask him what the story is, I think Dara and I have decided that, you know, next year we're going to get back on board coaching, and I'm going to hit the 80k eco trail next year. I'm going to give that a bash with a lot more time of coaching, obviously the full 9 months if we start in January, whatever it may be, January or February. So I'll get a lot more on-feet demands and coaching and stuff like that. But we don't know if the 80k will be my priority A race. I think next year I'm gumming a bit for a backyard ultra. I've always said it. I've said it to him before I even decided to do this ultra for the eco trail. So I know that there's a handful in Ireland. I know there's one in Tip where he's from. I know there's one in Dublin. And I know there's one, I think, maybe further over to the west of Ireland as well. So I think next year I'm going to try and hit 2 backyard ultras and just see what they're about. I don't know why I have this thing of completing X amount of loops for as many as you possibly can before you get disqualified. And just see how much mileage you get. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to see, well, if I can get 6.7 kilometer loops and how many I can achieve. Could I meet the same distance that I did with the 48 kilometers or more? And then obviously, is it a different kind of energy system development because you're chasing loops for time? So obviously there's a different format. You've got to complete every loop with under an hour. So if you get it in 45 minutes, you rest 15 and you've got to be back at the start line, and vice versa. The longer you take, the less recovery. And then the longer you take and you get past 60 minutes, you're disqualified. And it's the last man standing. There's no first, second or third. And I do believe the rule is that if 2 people finish, but the second person that gets back then decides to bow out, that last man standing doesn't actually win it. He or she has to complete the next loop and get back to win it. So you can't have 2 finish the loop and then 1 decide to bow out. That's my understanding. If 2 come to the last loop, but the one person decides that they're done, it doesn't automatically go to a win for that person. That person has to actually then go and complete the next loop once the gun time, whatever fucking starts, and then gets back. And if she actually doesn't get back on that loop, even though they were the last person to do it, they're disqualified because they didn't finish. So just that whole fucking mental capacity thing is fantastic. So I think Dara and I are going to do one of those. So certainly I'll be back on board coaching with Dara, or him coaching me, but we'll do the backyard ultras. And then come to the end of the year, if it falls in at the right time, we'll then get the 80k in, just to have that kind of long on feet continuous run done. And that's the plan. But again, if any of my friends and family do watch this, I said it to her straight away, but if it wasn't for Sive as well, my partner, you know, I wouldn't have crossed that line either. I mean, she was the rock of this whole thing. She was there for all of my training weeks, all of my training
runs, anything that she could do for me. Even though if she did complain, she was there for me, you know, just the logistic bullshit of it. But even on the day, she was there to really console me and make sure that everything was all good and ready to rock and roll. And just the, you know, the text messages throughout, you know, they were just the small things, they were there and everything. So no, she played a big part, and obviously my support team on the day, and even my mum as well to come out. I mean, the back behind the scenes for her as well. So yes, YouTube, that is it. That is me. I sorry that if this has gone over. I'll try my best to cut it or something like that if needs be, but it wasn't going to be a long one. I'm just going to let this play out now. I hope you enjoyed the YouTube series over the last couple of months. Apologies for this one being so late to get out, but again, just trying to digest it still, and you know, just to get back onto the horse and everything. It's been a lot, so I'm gonna love you and leave you. Thank you for always interacting. Again, like always, if you want to keep on seeing what I'm doing, my Instagram is always active as such. And yeah, hope everyone keeps well. I'm hopefully going to fizzle out this, play a bit of music, and just post some photos from the race. So I'll catch you guys again, and make sure to stay tuned if, you know, you do see anything pop up there. See you later, YouTube.